We're going to open the meeting, and the first thing I'm going to say is if there's any communication between any of the board members and any of the general public, that's to go through the chair and vice versa. So I'd like to open the public meeting. Can I have a motion?
I'll move to open the public meeting.
I'll second.
There's a moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The public meeting's open. Okay, would you please read that?
So the legal notice was published, public information hearing, Town of Harwich Community Preservation Committee. The Harwich Community Preservation Committee, CPC, will hold a public information hearing on Thursday, September 20th, 2018 at 6 p.m. in the Don B. Griffin Room, Town Hall, 732 Main Street, Harwich, Mass. 02645, pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44B, Community Preservation Act, Section 5, Subsection B, Subsection 1. As part of its study, the committee shall hold one or more public informational hearings on the needs, possibilities, and resources of the city or town regarding community preservation, possibilities and resources, notice of which shall be posted publicly and published for each of 2 weeks preceding a hearing in a newspaper of general circulation in the city or town. Your attendance is encouraged to learn about the Act and to discuss possible projects consistent with the Act and to review the submittal guidelines. The Act includes projects related to open space, community housing, historic preservation, and recreation. Application information is available online at http://www.harwich-ma.gov/community preservation committee or at the town administrator's office. If you have an idea for a project that you believe should be supported by the Community Preservation Fund, come and tell the town about it. The Community Preservation Fund comes from your taxes. You can help decide the best uses for it. Published in the Cape Cod Chronicle, September 6th and September 13th, 2018.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the floor is open. Anybody would like to speak? Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to speak on behalf of any particular need, but I do, especially since the process is working the way it's supposed to. And, I did want to go over a broad overview. I mean, I was a selectman in the early 2000s, during which time I was on the Mass Municipal Association Board of Directors when this legislation was written. If you look at the legislative history of it, it was specifically designed when it was enacted for the communities to be able to look at projects that would have never gotten funded absent the Community Preservation Act. There was a recognition that there was too much going on within 2.5 between firemen, policemen, teachers, whatever the essential needs of communities were, for them to even get to priorities that related to rec and youth or housing or conservation or whatever. With that in mind, when this was constructed, there was a fund that the town was getting matching monies from the state. It was always presupposed that that was going to evaporate someday, and it's actually starting to get to that point. But as you look at these projects, the first meeting was always intended to be a hearing in a sense of which you've gotten back to find out within that pot of money that you've got that's outside of the regular tax money, what do the people in the town want to see happen? But as you go through this during the course of the year, the only thing I'm saying now is I urge you to look at the broader picture of the money was supposed to be devoted to town needs that couldn't be funded, and that was its primary focus. Anything beyond that, the people were coming one-off for a project that they were interested in supporting should be looked at within the broader context of what does the town really need? And what is the town not able to fund outside of the CPC monies? So that's my only comment, is understanding what the genesis of the legislation was and what it intended to happen under the legislation.
Okay. Next.
Quick meeting.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, can I just request again that people introduce themselves when they step up?
You can. Would you please,
Certainly.
Myra? Would you
Certainly.
please- Yeah, thank
Good
you.
evening, Sally Urbano from West Harwich, and nice to see you all again. I'm breaking my usual rule where I sit in the back and wait till the end. But I have just some general questions, and it's about historic preservation, because I get confused, so I need your help. The first one, though, is regarding a past article that put forth, I think it's $32,000 for installation of historic windows in the West Harwich Schoolhouse, and it was revoted to keep it. I'm not sure where that is now. It hasn't been spent, but I don't know if you took it back or not.
Did-
That money's gone.
Did
No,
you
we put
believe
it back
We
in
recovered
the, we
that.
recovered it. We put it back in the general historic bucket, so to
Okay,
speak.
all right, thank you. And speaking of that bucket, do you happen to know how much is in that past bucket?
I don't.
Not at this moment.
Oh, okay. All right, then just a couple other, I have no project in mind at the moment, but just a couple of quick general questions. What would you feel about possibility that you could support a historic preservation report for the town of Harwich that would be included with the local comprehensive report?
Mr. Chairman?
Jim?
I would just like to ask a question with regard to procedure, in that I thought the purpose of today's meeting was to hear from the public as to what the public felt we as a committee should be looking at in funding, not to answer questions or do any evaluation of projects, in that comes at a later point in our process.
You're correct.
So what is it you're asking me? I'm not sure. So you don't want me to ask that question? You want me to reframe it?
No, this public hearing is to solicit from the general public, from the taxpayers, information on what they think they would like to see the CPC support. Provide direction, not to discuss policy.
Okay. All right, so let's see. So I would like to propose,
Just refrain.
I would like to propose that many people in town would like to see a local historic preservation study done to be included in the local comprehensive plan. That's one thing. Then another, I was approached by someone for this one, but they thought that it would be interesting to have a hiring of a consultant to evaluate reuse of historic buildings for affordable housing. And I think that's the only two I have at this point. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Okay. Well, in that case, I will ask for closure of the public meeting.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Public meeting's closed. I have a couple of incidentals here, and I didn't anticipate having this at an earlier date. I was just given the information tonight. So, Paul, you're with the Bikeways Committee?
Yes,
Go ahead and make your presentation.
thank you. My name is
And
Paul.
please state why you're here now.
Why I'm here now, and again, it's Paul Gazai from the Bikeways Committee, Mr. Chairman and fellow members. Apologize for not being here last week. Somehow something must have got missed as far as our project status review, and we thought it was this week. So that's the reason why I'm here speaking to you tonight. You approved a bikeway crossing at Pleasant Lake at the general store. I just wanted to make you aware of that the crossing lights have been purchased and now waiting for the DPW to install them. So that's working very, very well. Secondly, just a general statement is that we plan to submit for another set of crossing lights this year, which I hear is the October 1st deadline for the Depot Street crossing. and hopefully it meets to your approval. I didn't know if you, any others have any questions at all?
Questions?
No,
Jim.
no questions.
Mary?
None for me, thank you.
Kathy?
Yeah, of course I have a question. In the past, we've had concerns that some of the other ones hadn't been working correctly, and I know that they were addressed, and have you had any additional issues in the last 6 months
I
or
have
so?
not heard of any major issues. I know on occasion, whether it was a storm or whatever, and I'm also the central contact to Link, and Link and his group has responded almost like within that day or so. As long as we're made aware of it, he corrects the problem. Again, I mean, they're technical lights. They're $25,000, $27,000 for them, and obviously they must, either the weather or something else goes array, but every time I go by them, I want to try to make sure they're working.
Okay.
Chris?
No questions.
Thank you very much for your report.
Thank you, Dave.
Do you have a hard copy of that by any chance? Could you get it to us?
A hard copy of my notes tonight?
Or what the expenditure is in particular? How much was expended out of the account? What the balance of the account is?
Of last year's?
You don't have to come up with that now. If you get a chance, just put it in the CPC mailbox downstairs, and I'll get and disseminate it to the board.
I do have the project amount requested.
No, what I'm looking for is
Is
what the
the actual-
expenditure is within, yeah, that's right.
Okay, and of course, at this point, I guess I don't have the amount of monies that, what would Link spend to install them.
Right.
So, but I believe I can get that information, and you said in the CPC mailbox?
Mailbox downstairs, yeah.
Okay, I'll get it to you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, will you take a question from the audience?
Yes,
For the presenter. I have a question for the Bikeways fellow. Yes, sir.
you have to get up at the microphone, please.
Hi, my name is John Ketchum. I just have as a user of the bike path, frequent user of the bike path, I've noticed that one of the most hazardous places to cross a street is on Pleasant Street at 124. In fact, I was there the other day.
That's
My-
one that's going to be installed either.
Oh, I didn't hear you. Oh, I see. Okay, thank you. I have my answer.
When you become a full member,
Yes.
all those documents are going to be put in your lap, and you'll have to read them all.
Okay. Challenge accepted.
Okay, this is for the CPC board. I got a letter, and again, I just opened this letter when I came in here tonight. I got a letter from the town administrator and from the chair of the selectmen. And it's as follows: the Board of Selectmen would like to invite the CPC to attend the Board of Selectmen meeting to discuss possibilities and needs of the community and how they related to CPC. Let my office know a date when it's convenient for you. Also, as you know, the Community Preservation Committee requires that all project applications be reviewed by appropriate town boards, committees, and commissions before submittal, and be initialed and dated by said boards, committees, and commissions on the applications. This requirement leaves insufficient time to obtain approvals and signatures prior to submissions of applications, and the Board of Selectmen has asked that your committee consider changing the deadline for submission of applications from October 1st to the middle or the end of October. Thank you for this consideration. So I'll put it to the board. When I read this material, and based on the information I have, I understand that there is going to be an issue. And the issue may have been caused by me taking August off because I left the state. Now, so it put pressure on us to get this public hearing in on the time that we got it in. So what I would like to say to the board is, would the board consider changing the date for the application submittal? Jim?
I think it would be fair, especially due to the date of this public hearing tonight, that we do change it. I would be in favor of changing it to sometime around the middle of October, whether it be the 15th or the 16th or whatever is an appropriate date around the middle of October.
Okay. Chris?
That makes sense to me as well, but I do just have one clarifying question.
Sure.
Is the requirement for submission to the individual committees for sign-off before it is submitted to this committee a new requirement, or has it always been there?
It's been a requirement of this committee. It's not a requirement of CPC legislation,
Okay. So it's a requirement of this committee?
this committee.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, I have no problem with the date, with the extension, rather.
Mary?
So, I'm agreeable to the extension. My concern is only, if we only extend it till October 15th, being that I'm chair of Historic doesn't have a meeting until the 17th. I guess I would say, could we push it to November 1st? And then at least I have one meeting, one regular meeting, that if there are historic applications, that I can get those on to my actual historic agenda. That would be my only, I mean, I understand, and I
got it before, go ahead, Kathy.
I guess I'm just kind of stuck on, I don't understand why. I mean, the deadline for the applications has been October 1st since last October 1st. It's always the same. And I didn't hear anybody come tonight that said that they have had an application that they were waiting until tonight for some reason to, I don't know.
Right, but as long as I've been a member of this board, historically, August is when we had the public meeting. So that gave us more than enough time, even the previous boards, to do what they did. That's why they made the October 1st the deadline. So.
But I guess what I'm saying is that the public meeting, might bring up some priorities that an area might have, like historic or something, that they might want to address that they hadn't thought of, that they might need time. But I haven't heard anything tonight that says that. Am I wrong? I'm just sort of trying to understand.
Here's the other part of that equation. If it's consistently in August, and folks are waiting for August for that meeting, there may not necessarily be falling the bouncing ball into September. They may have just thought the CPC wasn't going to have that meeting.
Okay, the only.
That's a hypothetical, but
Yeah.
there it
I mean,
is.
the other thing about waiting until November 1st is that just pushes us, if we had 16 applications like we did last year, there's not really a lot of time to get everybody in and for us to deliberate. I mean, it is, but we'd have a lot of meetings in November and December into January.
Jim?
My concern is a little bit similar to Kathy's in that historically we have reviewed and evaluated and had meetings with regard to the various applications throughout November and December with deliberations in January. Now, once the applications are submitted to us, copies need to be made so that, and distributed to us so that we would have time to review at least the ones that were going to be heard at the first meeting in November, prior to that meeting. So I would be a little bit concerned as to whether or not moving it back all the way to November 1st would give us time. I think that would back up our entire calendar so that we may not get around to approving applications till almost February, and then we have a deadline with regard to the warrant for town meeting. I think with backing it up to October 15th, there would be time just to get the copies made and distributed so that the members could at least review the applications that were going to be heard at the first meeting in November.
Okay, we're halfway there. Mary?
So I understand exactly what both Kathy and Jim are saying. I do not think that it was unclear that our deadline was October 1st. So I'm not sure why the request is out there. I'm agreeable to going along with pushing an extension or giving them an extension. On the historic side, I'm looking at the fact that last year we had, I want to say 7 or 8 applications that were historic applications, and some of them were short and sweet and some of them were not. So I'm looking at it from that sense that I'm concerned that if something does come in, that's going to push. I'm going to have more than, I'm going to have to call a special meeting before October 17th, which is my deadline for the next meeting. So, I mean, I'm trying to be agreeable, but I will also say that this meeting is the meeting that is required for us to understand everybody's priorities. So I'm not sure what's driving the extension, whether it's the budget process or what, but
Well,
I'm trying to be agreeable,
I'd
but
like to settle this tonight, one way or the other. Jim, what did you recommend for a date?
Around October 15th. I
15th.
don't
That's
have
on
a
a-
calendar, so.
That's on a Monday.
Okay, so maybe October 15th would be a good day for a deadline. So by close of business on October 15th.
my meeting is the 17th, so, I mean.
Or if you wanted to back it up, but Mr. Chairman, I did have one question.
Sure, sir.
With regard to Mary's concern with regard to her committee approval, my understanding was we do need the Historic Commission to sort of review and approve, but does that need to be done before submission of the application or just before we take action on it?
It's always been before we take action on it.
Right, so therefore, Mary,
And I'm fine with that.
you wouldn't have to have your meetings before November 1st, but you would have to have your meetings maybe during the month of November or something, and into December so that we could take action in January.
And that's fine. I mean, I'm going from the premise that was written in the letter to us that says it needed to be signed off on before submission on October 1st. So that's what was driving my comment there.
Okay.
If
Gotcha.
you needed
Yep.
it before submission, then I'm looking at an earlier meeting than October 17th. So,
Okay, hold on for 1 second, please. Done.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, what Jim said is essentially what I was going to say to you. A large part of what was driving the request to move this was the belief that the date was concurrent with the submission documents being there supporting the submission. As you pointed out as the chair, that is an internal rule that you've been following. It's not in the legislation, and you could easily wave that forward and say, okay, we'll take the applications up to whatever date, the 1st, the 15th, but prior to our considering them, we will still allow you to submit the supporting documentation from the committees that have examined them. If you could do that, that would largely resolve the entire problem, because the original wording was you got to have the application in with the supporting hearings by October 1st.
So,
Okay. Want to make a motion?
Okay, I will move that, one, we adjust the deadline for submission of applications from October 1st to October 15th, and that we allow the submission of supporting information from various committees that will, other than the CPC, that will review and potentially approve these applications.
Jim, can you turn
Yeah,
that phone on?
I went really
She's going a mile a minute. I
well
can't keep.
Okay. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
Based on Dawn's summary, which seems to dovetail with what other people here have said tonight, is there really a need then to move the deadline beyond October 1st? Because if the stamp from the committee, the individual committees can come later, set a date for that, but leave the October 1st date in place, perhaps.
Jim?
Mr. Chairman, I think it would be very desirable courtesy by this board to applicants in view of the fact that the public hearing, which normally is held in August, has been delayed to tonight, just to give anybody who may have been here this evening and made a comment a little bit of extra time to submit an application.
Chris?
Okay, that's fine, but that's a different issue. That goes to the issue of the public hearing being late. And if that's the reason that we have an issue, then that's fine, then that's a legitimate reason to delay it. But it sounded to me like the reason was that we needed the individual committees to stamp their approval. But if part of the problem is that the public hearing was later than usual, then that's fine. I have no issue with that.
That's the crux of the,
Okay, very good.
okay.
Okay, are we back to my motion?
We're back to your motion, I'm sorry.
Okay, Jim, will you read how much you
Jim
got so
moves.
far, and then I'll continue.
Jim moved to adjust, number one, you said, to adjust the deadline of the applications from October 1st to October 15th to allow submission of support.
And to allow. And maybe since you have a number one on the first component,
And
it should be
two.
and
Thank
two.
And to allow,
And to allow the submission of supporting documentation, including.
hold on, documentation,
Including including but not limited to.
yeah?
Oh, Kathy's making it, could you put 2018 after the date?
Yes?
So November 15th, 2018?
No,
Yeah.
October.
October.
October 15th, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I have it.
Okay, you have it. You're doing better than me, Jim.
Including but not limited to.
To
Approvals.
approvals from various town committees that are relevant to the application.
And Chris, just for your information, there's two attorneys sitting on the board. I'm not gonna name who they are, but I tend to leave the legalese up to them.
I'm not one of them.
That are relevant to
The application.
the
The
application.
applications,
Thank
yes.
you. And we need that to be seconded.
Second.
Okay,
All set? Do
yes.
you want to read it back, just in case? Please.
Jim moved and Mary seconded. One, to adjust the deadline of the applications from October 1st to October 15th, 2018. And two, to allow the submission of supporting documentation, including but not limited to approvals from various town committees that are relevant to the application.
Correct.
We said October 15th.
2018.
No, that's not what he's asking. What are you asking?
I believe that there were two issues. And one was the deadline for the application to be submitted, and the other one was the deadline for the supporting documentation. Are you going to make them concurrent, or was that your motion, or?
No, the motion was not concurrent. I think that the intent is that the submission would be prior to action by this committee.
I get that, but wouldn't you want to put a date on the second part of your motion? And number two is to allow for submission from supporting documentation to be delayed until.
If the board, chooses to do that, I have no objection to that.
Because I think that, again, I think that was the driving force, that everybody was panicked that it wasn't just the application. The application had to come accompanied by an approval, or else you wouldn't even consider the application.
I mean, if we're going to have something like that, we traditionally do our approvals in January, so we could make a deadline December 31st.
Whatever your desire is, I'm just pointing out that if you give them time after they submit to get to a committee to allow for that secondary flow of documents to come in, that was the real concern, is that it seemed like if you don't get a committee to agree with you prior to the submission of the application, you don't get considered, period. So if you have the second date that's also pushed back a little bit further, that's consistent with your ability to review these, that's really what the pressure point was.
Mr. Chairman, just a clarification question again, I'm sorry. That date, both dates have traditionally been October 1st,
Yes.
right? We missed the meeting.
The August meeting.
By a month.
Right.
So wouldn't it make sense to, if the new deadline is going to be October 15th, maybe make the second deadline November 15th, something, or November 1st? I don't know why we would go all the way to December 31st if it's always been October 1st, when we really only had a 30-day delay.
Well, I mean, my sort of concern is, I mean, Mary had pointed out, a potential problem if there were a lot of applications, with her committee being able to thoroughly review and act upon those applications. And last year, Mary's committee did have, that type of problem because of the number of applications that required that committee to act. I mean, in my feeling that, we have the discussion of the applications. If we feel that that's necessary to have that type of approval, really the key issue is our voting on the approval of the applications and having that information in hand when we vote the approvals.
How is the,
Mary?
What if we say December 1st, and then at least most boards and commissions should have 2 months worth of meetings that we could address something?
Okay. Let me just throw out a hypothetical, if I may.
Yep.
What about an application where, for some reason, the applicant, either didn't understand or, didn't feel they needed the approval of, say, your committee, but when they came in front of us, we felt that that was important to our being able to vote. And that hearing or that discussion of that application occurred in December.
I see the issue.
So that would be the hypothetical I'd be concerned about. And in the past, we have always completed our review of all the applications and the discussion with the applicants prior to the Christmas holidays in
That's correct.
December, and never actually did the deliberation until sometime in
true.
January.
That's not true.
Well, it has as long as I've been on the
Yeah,
committee.
well, we've,
Right, same
Yeah.
with me.
no, we've done plenty of times, we were done before, because the warrant articles used to have to be in January, so we had to have the decisions usually before the break. But then the selectmen changed the date that the warrant articles had to be submitted to February 1st or 15th or something like that.
Right.
So it gave us more time, which is why we kind of bled in a little bit into January. But it was always preferable to do the majority of the presentations and the deliberations by mid-December.
All right, we're getting bogged down in the weeds here. Can't we simply say the 7th or 15th for the second part of the application?
The 15th of October.
October?
I'm
For both of
concerned,
them?
I'm concerned with Mary's comment that if she gets 7 or 8 applications that require a detailed review by her committee, it may be very difficult. She's not even having a meeting till the 17th. And if they have to sit there and review, say, 6 or 7 applications, you need some consideration that go beyond that meeting, that it may not be able to be done during the month of October. It may take her committee longer. Now, that may be true with other committees also, but it depends on what types of, and how many applications we get.
Mary, can I ask you, how did you resolve the problem last year?
So we didn't have an issue last year. Our town planner last year was staffed to the Historic Commission, and she did a very good job of addressing things during department head meetings and made sure that people knew they had to come in. And I don't know whether people were earlier in doing their applications, the town departments were earlier in doing their applications last year or what, but she had kind of shepherded that process for us last year on the Historic Commission, so we had those. I don't recall all of those applications I think we did review them before submission, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But we had them all, and it was just done. It was on our agendas. So I don't know if that means town staff was further ahead in their process, their application process, or if it was, Ally driving the bus, every department head meeting, and perhaps communication from this board too, saying that they needed to be reviewed before submission, which perhaps we haven't had as much communication in that regard as we did last year. I don't know, but it wasn't an issue last year for us.
Right. Different.
And I look at it now and I say, yeah, we haven't seen anything yet,
Gotcha.
so.
Okay.
Yeah, the public hearing last year was in September, FYI.
I don't remember that.
No, I remember it being like towards the end of August.
That's what I thought.
No,
She has the
September
date.
14th, 2017, FYI.
She has
the
dates.
Let's not get bogged down. Can we change the date from the 15th to the 22nd? It's the following Monday. Will that give them enough time, or give Mary enough time to do it?
It will
What
give
I'm
me-
hearing is
It'll
no.
give me one meeting, which
Yeah.
means I'll need to know those submissions that week, because it has to get posted on my meeting agenda.
Yeah,
So,
I mean.
not
David-
really.
David, it sounded to me as if Mary's suggestion, based on her concerns, was December 1st.
That gives me an October meeting and a November meeting, just in case.
And my
Okay, all right.
my only concern with that was the hypothetical that I
Right,
raised.
right.
And I get Jim's point, I guess, if that situation comes up, people will have
cross
to
that-
seek special dispensation from us.
Right.
Okay.
Beg for
So,
forgiveness.
so then I would accept to my motion a friendly amendment that the supporting information be submitted no later than December 1st.
I agree to that.
You're going to make the motion. You're the friendly amendment.
Well, he's accepted the friendly amendment, so I'll second the friendly amendment.
Okay. Okay, motion has been seconded. All those in favor?
Oh,
Aye.
Clarification, we're
Yes.
talking about the motion as amended.
Right.
Okay. Aye.
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 I'm abstaining.
Okay. 4 ayes, 1 abstention. 4.
Yeah, I'm just
One.
wondering,
1 abstention.
remember that old thing where we don't have a quorum for?
It has nothing to do with
Has
this.
nothing to do, okay.
No, we're voting. Okay, Dawn.
Well, the horse isn't quite out of the barn, but thank you for accepting that. In answer to Chris's question, going back, it wasn't last year, but 2 and maybe 3 years ago, that the problem did occur. And the question then was, and it's not a small in the weeds question, it's, are you really thinking that you were going to dispose of an application through form rather than substance? Because it was a project that may have been worthwhile, but they didn't give you the supporting documentation from a committee on the deadline date with the submission, so we're not even going to look at it. That was a real problem. It wasn't last year, and with this, it won't be either. But that was your prerogative because you set that as a requirement for your CPC here, and it doesn't always exist in other towns. So you had the ability to extend that deadline, waive it, whatever you'd like to. But you started with a deadline, and then the supporting documentation was always a secondary consideration, except for those 2 years where you did play it, that if you didn't get it in, we're not even going to look at it, which was something that caused quite a bit of a hardship because you weren't looking at actual substance at that point. You were looking at, okay, the paperwork's not all in, so we're not going to look. This is a fair solution, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on. Next agenda. Any things that we have to,
Dates.
yeah, I just closed
That's what, no, I meant for the next
the agenda.
agenda. We
Right.
need dates for the extra meetings.
Okay. Board. She's saying we need extra dates for the extra meetings.
To go on the agenda for next meeting.
Right.
Yes.
We don't know how many applications
Basis
are
we're
gonna
gonna
get.
get.
So I'm just suggesting that everyone know, come prepared to discuss
When's our next meeting?
possible dates. The next one is October 11th, Thursday, in the small meeting room.
Okay,
And the small meeting
Chris.
room is right around the corner, Dan.
go ahead.
Do we have to pick a date to meet with the board? Was that part of the request that you got?
That was quite part of the request, but I'll have that discussion with the chair.
Fine.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, with regard to setting additional dates for additional meetings, I think we need to know the totality of the number of applications we're going to be dealing
We're
with,
not gonna know that until.
and we're not going to know that until after the next meeting.
I agree.
But if you don't plan something, we do it via emails, because November 8th would be our next scheduled meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it comes down to you booking those extra meetings in November and December,
There's no choice.
but we're not gonna try for an extra October?
May I suggest a solution? The date that we are now, accepting applications is Monday, the 15th of October. I would suggest that we change the next meeting to the following Thursday, which would be the 16th, the 18th of October. At that point, we'll know exactly how many applications have been filed, and then better able to determine how many extra meetings we may need, and at that point, determine when the date for those extra meetings.
Mary,
I'm fine with that.
Works for
Chris?
me, yep, makes
Kathy,
sense.
Okay.
okay,
So everyone in this room right now is committed to that date.
We're
So I've got
committed to
a
that
quorum at this point.
Un-
That's all I care about.
except for one, well, he's the-
Yeah,
John, maybe,
unfortunately,
and
I am
Cindy
going to
and-
be out of town that day,
We'll
the
see.
18th.
If we, I
I'll
just,
be,
I
I'm
just want a
available.
quorum. If you're gonna change the date, I want a quorum. That's all I care about. Because it's really hard pinning y'all down if you make a change.
Yeah, no, I understand that, Jan.
not a problem. I'll call Cindy and I'll call
Randy.
Randy.
And I may be able to adjust what I'm doing to make it, but right now I'm scheduled to be out of town.
That's
on the
reasonable.
18th.
John, are you available?
No, he's not gonna be here.
Okay.
At that meeting also, we need to discuss David Spitz project, reclaiming that money,
Oh, okay.
because I think it's gone beyond the scope, but we'll have that discussion then. What was the other one?
The plan? The preservation plan?
We need to develop the CPC plan. There's a lot of information out there that's still out there. I've talked to the town planner. She's willing to help if we can get the information. She said it's a relatively easy thing to write if you have the information in place. So, here's the additional kick. Information from the planning board, open space. Bob McCready asked this a long time ago, and Rec has already got it done. It's information to put in to a comprehensive plan for CPC.
Okay. Okay, the planning board has had numerous discussions about developing a comprehensive plan for the town.
Right, but there's one in place now.
There's been one in place
For a long
number
period of time.
years.
Right.
That
Needs
there are
updating.
various opinions as to whether or not it really is a comprehensive plan. Now, if you're looking for open space and conservation, there is an approved open space
And recreation.
and recreation
Right.
plan. There's also an approved housing plan. But other than that, the planning board has not moved on developing a townwide comprehensive plan. We requested from the finance committee a sum of $200,000 in order to, bring on a consultant to start the development of that type of plan. That was turned down, or at least pushed on to the next year, we don't know if we're going to get funding in another year. So I'm not sure what the planning board would have available, to feed into the comprehensive plan. The other thing,
They have the old plan in place.
but the old plan by the majority of the members of the planning board is not considered a comprehensive plan. Okay?
That-
Old
that's
one
the-
was closer.
Yeah, the
No, when you said,
2002
the majority of the planning board, I get it.
Yeah.
I got it, I understand.
Right.
So,
So, I mean, I think, David, to just step back, during the spring, we were taking a look at what we considered to be a plan for the Community Preservation Committee. I don't think we ever came to resolution of that issue. I know we were taking a look at what some other towns had. I can remember, I think when Joe was on the committee, he brought in Wellfleet. I reviewed that, and that was just a statement of facts. as
no,
to-
that was, I did the Wellfleet, he
Okay.
brought in Truro.
Truro, okay,
Right.
so it was Truro that I reviewed. I had conversations, we all sort of took different towns. I took Chatham, and unfortunately was absent the night that I was supposed to report on Chatham. But Chatham doesn't really have a community preservation, plan. And I think before we decide how to sort of put it together, we need to come to agreement as to what we're looking at. Because the way I read the statute is taking a look at what sort of the general needs of the town are with regard to that.
Based off the comprehensive plan.
The comprehensive plan certainly is, let's put it this way, the Community Preservation Committee plan should be a component of the comprehensive plan. They should all be compatible. But in my mind, unless we go back to 2002, we don't really have that type of comprehensive plan in place in this town. And that's why the planning board had talked and put in a request for funding to get a consultant on board so that we could develop a new comprehensive plan. That process, even if we get funded through this year's budget and town meeting, the funds would not be available till next summer, and that process at the best would take at least 2 years. So I'm saying I don't think the planning board is going to have the answer that you're looking for, but I think to some extent this committee needs to determine, what it as a committee feels is a community preservation plan, and see whether or not we can, put together at least certain components of that.
Kathy, you drive me crazy.
I
I'm a
think-
lawyer. What would you expect, David?
I think that, given the timing and that we're gonna be having all these applications, et
I-
cetera, that we need to save this discussion until after our deliberations have been completed in January, and get it on the next agenda after that, and have this discussion, and then decide how we're gonna proceed.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
I have no
reasonable.
I have no problem with that.
That's
suggestion.
reasonable. Okay, anything else for the board?
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question and then give a statement? Is it too late, in other words?
We close that.
Okay, can I ask a question then?
You had, it's not in the proper procedure. For the public to have a question is in for public comment at the very beginning, when I open it up to that. So this is just now a discussion with this board. And I apologize for that, but that's the way we've said it. You're more than welcome to come to the next meeting.
Okay,
At the public comment part, you can say what you need to say.
okay, okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you. All right. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Good night, folks.